Your Diwaze podcasts are brought to you by First Nations Fiber. This is the Beading Table, and we are your hosts, Tekaronhiahkhwa Standup, and myself, Leith, Mahkewa, two career bead workers and business owners who want to share our experiences and trials in beading. Today is our launch of our first podcast, and we will be talking about the who's who behind the mic, some inspiration, and the current projects that we are working on. Hope you have a listen.
First Nations Wireless is now First Nations Fiber. Connection is so important, and FN Fiber gets you connected. Whether you're streaming the biggest new movie while the kids are gaming upstairs or stuck in that meeting, you won't have to worry about your connection. Coming to Kahnawake soon. Visit radio.fnfiber.com to sign up today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beading Table with Leith, Mahkewa, and
Tekaronhiahkhwa Standup.
And this is our inaugural podcast focusing on beadwork chit-chat, tips, hot topics, and just some of the talk that normally happens around a beading table.
So we're here today. We have all kinds of different things to kind of bring up. We want to try to focus on a few things at a time. We don't want to focus on everything in one podcast.
So, Tekaronhiahkhwa, I wanted to just maybe give the listeners a little bit of information about ourselves, maybe where we're actually recording from, some of the things that we've done in the past as bead workers, and, just some little personal tidbits that they might find interesting. So, did you want to start?
Sure. So, my name is Tekaronhiahkhwa Margaret Standup. We are based right now in Kahnawake. That's where we're recording at Your Diwaze. I am the store owner of the shop. It's called Traditions. I am a mother of two, and I'm an artist / bead worker. So I've been doing that for some time now. Professionally, maybe about 10 years. Current projects right now. I am actually just finishing up a few different things. Periodically, I do raffles and things like that. So with the Christmas rush, some of them got put on the back burner. So right now I have to honor them and finish them up. So I finished one last night. It feels amazing to finish a project. Yeah, so I have one more that I have to finish up, and then I have to move into Grad Orders. That's always a big project. So this year I kind of try to reduce the amount that I'm taking on. So I have 3 actually, which is still a lot, but one is only moccasins. There's another 2 orders that are full sets. One.
Just to clarify, we're talking about raised beadwork. Because
Yes.
I said we are going to introduce ourselves and you jumped right into our first topic.
Oh, did I? Sorry.
That's kind of how it is,
yeah.
but And I'm Leith, Mahkewa. I am also sitting here in Kahnawake. I am not originally from Kahnawake. I'm from Oneida First Nation of the Thames in Ontario, but I've lived here in Kahnawake basically my entire life. I've been doing raised beadwork for about maybe almost 20 years now, I guess, but professionally maybe 15 to 13 years. A juicy tidbit of mine is that when I finish a project, I have to get it out of my possession. I have to immediately, if possible, give it to the person who it belongs to. I don't like to have any of that SHIT around my house because it just weighs me down and doesn't get me ready for the next project, which is something I wanted to talk about before we get into the tidbits and tips about all kinds of beadwork and all that kind of stuff. Can you just share maybe a little bit about some of the projects that you finished in the past year, or maybe the end of 2021, since we're now in 2022? Happy New Year's, everybody.
Some of my projects. So I don't normally take on Christmas orders just because that time of the year is pretty crazy at the store. So I don't usually have that extra time. I kind of had a past order that needed to be filled. So I did part of that to try to be like a Christmas order. So it was a yoke. So that I had to work on that and just try to get that finished. Oh, I did have a little thing with my family. Years ago, there was the trilobe whimsies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, there's a big long story to that. But I had some that were from my great-grandmother. So that were never completed. So I decided there was a bunch of them. So I messaged a lot of my cousins and asked if they all wanted to, whoever was available to make one with me and whatever. So we did that. That was a little project. It was.
Do you have a lot of beadworkers in your family?
Yeah, now I do. There's about 6 to 7 of us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, from my maternal line, on that side. But yeah, there's more and more, different generations of us are all picking it up and doing it more now. So yeah, it's pretty good.
So how many did you like distribute? And did you get any back, or like what did you do with them?
So I don't remember offhand. I think it was like 7 or 8 of us who completed them. Some couldn't do it for Christmas, like, just things are busy at that time. So, but I do have a few that we actually have to distribute now and stuff like that, but they're still at the shop. But yeah. So I think there was about 6 of us maybe that completed it out of the 8 or whatever, 7 or 8. Yeah, I posted it. It was all on my Facebook, like the final projects that everyone completed. So they were really nice. It was really nice to see different takes on it. And it's all the same shape. It's they were all different colors, different velveteens and things like that. And everyone just did their own thing. There wasn't a set pattern or anything. It was just do whatever. So
I think that's the most interesting thing. But like you teach classes. I thankfully don't. I'm just not into that right now. But I think that's the most interesting thing is that when you have a class and it's like, depending on what it is you're making, you usually have like a set pattern, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what comes out of that, even though it's a set pattern, everyone has the same size typically, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone has a different take on like the color combinations and different things of that nature. And I think when you look back at older beadwork, which would be maybe constitute the trilobe that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're beading it now, so it's not old, but it comes from an older pattern. But you see, as across the Confederacy, because everybody, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people did mimic the same kind of patterns, not necessarily the same kind of beadwork, but you see like the distinction. And even though it's the same pattern, it's completely different. And the colors are completely different and the style. And I think that's really what sets an artist apart from another artist.
I actually did, last year I did a project, or it was 2 years ago, where I did offer a class. It was a purse, but the whole conditions of the class were that everyone was getting the same beads, the same fabric, and same velveteen. So everyone got the same colors. Mm-hmm. When they were completed, though, they all looked completely different because of the way the color, like the way that they set up the beads, even though everyone had the exact same colors. So it was really interesting to see like the different takes on it, even though, everyone started with the same stuff. So it was pretty cool.
Interesting. Did you have that on your Instagram, or is that through the store?
That was through the store. I don't remember if I posted the pictures though of the completed projects, because I don't think everybody completed it all at the same time. Some needed more time and things like that. So I think there was maybe 2 or 3 that got posted, but you can still see the differences. So maybe we should kind of jump into a little bit about our podcast and what our listeners can expect from what we're doing.
I guess our podcast really just organically grew out of us talking at the shop, or or even not even talking to each other, but kind of like taking stock in how we chit chat and communicate with other people when we're beading, because there's so much conversation. And I'll be honest, it's not necessarily has anything to do with beadwork. And sometimes it's gossipy. Sometimes it's like, like sharing what it is, like it's going on in your family and different things like that. But for us, I think we were at the shop and we just were talking about some really good, juicy stuff. And I said, like, we should have a podcast and it'd be so fun and so cool. But I'm one of those, like, I have lots of great ideas, but I'm not a follow through kind of gal. So whatever, and organically it happened with Yordi was it, and we're here today, and we had our first like podcast experience with Abby a few weeks back, which we can probably post on our new Instagram page called The Beading Table. Woo! So we're going to do that. We're going to put a link there. It's just like a podcast where we're going to maybe talk about some of the hot topics. And then when I mean hot topics, I mean like the nitty gritty of like
the beading world.
The beading world. And one of the hottest topic that we got through our Instagram like question was like copying people and like copying somebody versus finding inspiration, and how do you deal with it and different things like that. And I think a lot of people want to know, just because it's something that's out there. People get inspired, quote unquote, by other people. And sometimes you see a blatant
replica
of what it is somebody's made. So that's a hot topic. Another hot topic, not because it's so juicy and like, ooh, scandalous, but is pricing. People want to know, like, how do you price something? And that's really subjective, depending on what it is you're making, how big it is, and different things like that. So we're going to try to get into topics like that. We're also going to try to get into topics that like tips and tricks of beading, maybe some of the things that we use in terms of supplies, some of the patterns, like how you would manipulate a pattern to make it bigger or smaller or something like that. We're by no means the experts in this area. We do have life experience in terms of the beading and different things like that. But it's all subjective. Again, it's all whatever it is that you can bring to it. And like I said, we're not the experts in this area. We are just able to have this platform and we're just giving from our experience. So I think that's what I think anyway, this podcast is. What do you think this podcast is going to be? How many swear words would Margaret say in a podcast is what I want to know.
I'm going to try to do 0, but I can't, you know. So that's a little disclaimer that we were joking about, is that, we don't want to turn any of our listeners off. So we are going to try to keep it clean. But
when we get together, the F-bombs are flying.
Yeah, sometimes we get really passionate about what we talk about. So you know what? If it slips out, we are very sorry and we will apologize.
And we're not trying to be malicious or try to be like crass or anything. But, it is possible that something might come out.
And it happens sometimes. Yeah. So, but for me, I think I am really new to this whole podcast thing. So this was pretty much all on you. This was your, and I was along for the ride. So, and we like to talk. We have all kinds of different topics that we always bring up and things like that. So for me, I was just, I love talking about these things. I love hearing different ideas and views on all these topics because it's really interesting. Sometimes you have to question your own views and see how I feel. Is this a personal thing? Am I just, overreacting? And so what are other people's views to help you kind of tame your own demons, sometimes so I really like to, get down to the nitty gritty and ask those. Sometimes they're hard questions to ask because you're going to get mixed reactions from people. So I like to hear it though, as uncomfortable sometimes as it is when people don't always agree with you or it's, it is what it is. Yeah. So for me, that's kind of why I was excited to do this, because then we get to, hopefully we'll have guests come into studio. Sure. Yeah. I would like to continue posting, questions here and there as they arise on our Instagram and see what people have to say. And it's nice that we're getting, questions across the whole Confederacy. It's not even just within Kahnawake. So it was nice to see a lot of the questions that came out and things that I've never thought about, there was one just the history of beading and things like that. Like you said, we're not experts. I don't have all the answers to some of those things. I have maybe my opinion on some of them, but if, other people have more info, that's, always welcome. But yeah, for me, it's just, I really enjoy this opportunity to just talk about things. And it's things that everybody talks about when you're at a beading table. It's all these things.
Or talks in the DMs of another beading artist.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we all, that always happens. Things circulate. And sometimes they are tough topics to have to handle. It's important to bring them to light, no matter how uncomfortable they are, because how do things change if they're not addressed? And for me, I like to try to keep things as peaceful and calmly as possible. So I don't ever want to make anybody feel like right or wrong here. It's just discussions. It's open discussions about different things. So yeah.
I think listeners can hopefully appreciate that there'll be lots of truth at the beading table. We're not inflating our own egos by sitting here and doing a podcast. Yeah. I think that's one of the things too, by putting for me, putting myself out here on a podcast, and I'm like, oh my God, look at me. I'm doing those. That's not what it is. It's just a fun thing to do. Cause why not? Everyone and their mother has a podcast. And I just love listening to podcasts. And it's just a good way. And especially during the times, it's a good way to interact with one another. It's a good way to pass the time when you're beading, is to listen to a podcast or watch a show or listen to music. That's what I do. Maybe that's the first question I'll ask you, is when you're at home by yourself, what is it that you bead to? Music, movies, podcasts, audiobooks?
For me, normally I'm a Netflixer. I do all that. So I have to kind of watch, I guess, in quotations, because I don't really watch, I listen. So I am one of those who I can watch a series, but then I'll just keep watching it over and over because I know what's going on. So I can just listen. It's harder for me, it's harder to bead to a new series because then I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And what did I miss? Because I'm beading. I can't always pay attention and watch. Right? Yeah, exactly. So I usually watch things or listen to them or whatever. But I like more of the movies or series and things like that.
So what is the last thing you watched while beading?
Well, I just restarted that Sweet Magnolias.
Okay, no, never watched that one.
It's nice. It's like the only thing is, I wish I would have known or checked it out. It's like a one series show, which I'm not into. I need a long.
Like I like a Grey's Anatomy.
Yes, like where it's a million shows and it's like it'll get you through a year. Like
or a big project, I like to watch Grey's Anatomy, and I think I've watched it like maybe 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, same.
Or I should say listen to it 6 or 7 times. It's just like background noise, right? So.
Yeah. So some of my favorites like that are Grey's Anatomy. I like Jane the Virgin.
I think we have very different.
Yes. I'm like soapy, romantic comedy type of deal, whatever. This is a little bit out of my box, but I really enjoyed it was Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not usually into like that whole kind of thing, but I just finished that yesterday. So, and what about you? I know that you do different, like you're all over with your stuff.
Yeah,
so.
I'm all over the place. For me, I mean, my go-to right now, it's so crazy, is The Last Dance. That Michael Jordan one. Mm-hmm. That's one of I've been watching that like nonstop. And I think it's really because I've added running to my life. Like I like to bead, but I'm also trying this running thing. But I think it's because like it's inspiring. It's inspiring, period. Like that's what I think. So I've been watching that over a little bit every once in a while. When I kind of get in a funk, I watch it. I also watch on HBO The Shop. And it's basically people in a room, the barbershop, chit-chatting about different things. And I find is very inspiring too. And I can see a lot of similarity when they're talking about like, there's different rappers that come on and different things. And they talk a lot about like being inspired by somebody versus like copying and different things like that. I think because like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's not like a competitive thing, but it's your own creative like thing.
It's like an art form. Yeah.
It's an art form. So I think that's pretty good. And I'm a Grey's Anatomy kind of gal, but I'm also like serial killers and that kind of stuff, which I know is completely out of your genre. And it's just something I like to watch. And I think now though, because I'm a seasoned beater, but because I'm more seasoned now, I can really focus and watch at the same time and not have to like compromise on anything. So, but I also like to listen to music. I have a beading playlist and different things like that.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I know you can't watch those kind of shows. You'll be like,
no,
afraid.
I can't. I'll have like a panic attack while I'm
Okay. I have a question for you. So here's a big question.
All right.
So we were talking earlier about like getting inspired and different things like that. What brings you inspiration? So wait, before I even get into that one, because this is how I talk, I'm like on one thing and then I go to another tangent. Okay. You recently posted a raffle that you did that was monochromatic red. Mm-hmm. Now, normally you do not bead in that style, monochromatic. What inspired you to do that? And why red?
It always varies where I get my inspiration. Like, it sounds so, I don't know, hokey pokey a bit, but
cliche.
Yeah, but sometimes it's really about the feeling of what's going on at the time. Sometimes it could be something as simple as I see material that I'm like, oh my God, I love it. I love the colors. I love the whatever. And then sometimes it could be something personal, something that's going on. It's an outlet. It's an emotional outlet. And I just kind of feel out the colors almost, if that makes sense. You know, like if I'm having like
pulling different ones, you mean, or
more like they go along with my emotions at the time.
Oh, okay.
You know,
like blues if you're bluesy?
It kind of, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like almost like the art therapy type technique, you know, where they say like, okay, well, if you're upset, you know, what color would show that you're upset? That kind of thing. Yeah. So it is similar like that. It's almost like a therapy type of thing. So it always varies and always depends. That red one particularly, I really like seeing beadwork that's one color or like shades of one color. I don't always know how to do it in the sense that, or I do, but I don't always feel like I know how, I guess. So I had seen fabric for that one. So I just love the contrast of the white and the red and like the deep colors of it. So yeah, so that's kind of where that one came from. But there was a really interesting thing that came up. I don't know if, I guess I'll bring it up. So it's a little controversial, I guess, like in different places. There was a comment on it, how somebody had thought that the colors were so beautiful, but in different parts of the Confederacy, that is not it's not considered okay to do it all in red like that. Well, I don't know. This is based off
that's interesting, though.
Yeah,
I never heard that, but yeah.
Yeah, it was based off of the comment more. So I don't really know too much about it because I don't think it's an issue here. I'm not sure anyways, but I thought it was interesting. So yeah, so we just kind of like had a little bit back and forth on it. And it was just kind of like what, she had described as like kind of, I don't know if it's just too flashy or if it's too like, it has too much of I guess I want to say like a sexualized content, like because of the red.
Really?
I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, like.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure really, because, like I said, because I don't really know. It's not something here, but so.
Like that kind of runs in the same kind of like line as before. And I don't know now, and I don't prescribe to this notion that it's not okay, but some people do, and that's people's prerogative, right, to do it. It is, but like putting babies in black.
Yeah.
Like before, like. But now, like, there's shirts, and before you probably couldn't find a lot of things that were in the color black, but now there is a lot more things you can find. But I remember in the beginning, they would say, well, don't put any, like, beadwork on a baby's moccasin or something like that. Black, that was black. So, I mean, maybe that's kind of runs in the same thing. Like, but I don't know.
Me neither. I don't really know. So I really thought that was interesting. That is interesting. Like when she brought
anybody knows any more about color association with like what should and shouldn't be done, it'd be interesting conversation to just
to learn more and to hear like the different perspective. It was almost kind of like it was like scandalous a little bit. So
when you said that about the red, I almost thought like the scarlet letter.
Yeah,
like
kind of. Yeah. So so I thought that was interesting, and yeah, exactly. Like hearing more on that would be interesting to kind of know where that sits and where it stands with different people. So, anyways, I made that though. So there's I just finished those ones up. So yeah.
I know, I really like it. It looks sharp.
Thanks.
It's really good, yeah. I like it. But then I also like the fabric inside, the white and the red fabric. If anybody's interested, you can actually see these moccasins on
TS Beading.
Yeah.
On Instagram. Yeah. I usually have it on my Facebook, but my my Facebook is like everything, so that's like my whole life. But my Instagram is just the TS Beading is just my beading. So.
And maybe we'll even post it on the Beading Table just to give like reference so that people can see it. Just a bit easier to.
Yeah, check it out and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, so you know what? Let's jump into current projects. So what are your current projects?
My current projects, are you talking about procrastinating projects? Those are projects I use because I'm trying to procrastinate on the real projects or real projects. Actually,
let's hear them all.
Okay, so my current project, I have two current projects. One is actually started and one is just in the little seed planting stage in my mind. So the first project is I have a grad order. It's a young woman who is graduating from grade 6, and she would like a yoke and cuffs and moccasins. So I'm doing that, and everything is almost done in terms of the prep part, except for the yoke, because I have to do a measure. Like a lot of my things I do are custom order. So everything I make is always made specifically for that person. So I have to remake most of my patterns. So that's, it's a little bit challenging, but it is what it is, whatever. Then my second order is also a grad order for one of my cousins who is graduating with her Bachelor of Education. So I'm making her a pair of moccasins, which is really good because I'm glad I'm only have these like two small orders. I mean, most people would probably consider a grad order a big order, but for a younger person, in terms of the size and the magnitude of what you need to bead, it's a lot less than an adult, just because you don't want to be so heavy and like overpower the young features of a young person. So I don't mind that. But what I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but for my two current orders, and the order that not the order, but the project I just finished, which was a pair of moccasins for my daughter, all three wanted light blue fabric. So the two current ones that I have now, it's the exact same fabric they want. Their color scheme, thankfully, is different because I don't know if I could do like two of the same in the same tones, just because sometimes you don't want to like mimic the same. Like you gotta, it has to be a little bit different, but thankfully they are different. So, but I didn't know that when the first person picked their fabric and the second, I didn't even know that they were going to pick the same thing, and they did. So it's kind of interesting that. So I don't know if that's a onward trend, like in terms of fashion, that light blue is coming out. Maybe it is. I don't know. But so that's what I noticed for my two current projects. And then I have two projects that I have to finish. One is I do a beadwork exchange with one of my bead groups. unfortunately, due to COVID and all that kind of stuff, we haven't been able to get together. But every year we make an ornament and we exchange the ornament. So I have an ornament that I have to do, which I started, I think 2 days ago or something. So it was all ready as soon as I got the ornaments. Everything's designed. So I just have to bead that. And then I have a piece, like a panel piece I did with 24 karat gold that I'm trying to figure out what it is I'm going to do with it. So that's my current projects. Do you have any? How about you? Do you have any current projects?
Yes. So yesterday I finished that red piece.
Yeah.
The red moccasins. Yes, that was for a past raffle. I have one more past raffle that has to get completed now. Things were obviously crazy with Christmas in the store and all that jazz. So things got kind of put beside. So right now I'm just looking at trying to finish those up. I have a past order that was kind of just put on the side. It was like do a little bit at a time. In the beginning, it had a timeline, and then we kind of stretched the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's interesting when that happens. So if I have a timeline, I feel like it has to get done, obviously, because you have a deadline. Yeah, you have a deadline. So, but when those gates open up, sometimes that's not always the best thing. For me, even though you get more time, I tend to just feel like, oh, well, it's not due so it ends up getting pushed aside. So that's kind of what happened with this piece. So I have to just kind of give myself more discipline on it to say, okay, no, this has to get completed. So that's another one that I have to continue working on. It's about maybe 70% of it is done. It's a large order too. So that's like yoke, cuffs, moccasins, purse, all that. So,
and so you said you had done part of it. So what part did you do?
Well, the yoke is completed. That was kind of like a Christmas order. Like I turned it into a Christmas order. Like I gave myself the deadline to say, okay, this yoke needs to be done and gone before Christmas. So I met that. The moccasins are all done, but there was little things like I was in transition. It's so funny. That's whole nother topic, but I was in transition of changing my style with the moccasins and things like that. So I was looking at them the other day and I'm like, oh, no, this is not how I do it now. So I kind of want to take it apart. I want to take all the beadwork off and then redo it to what I do now. So yeah, so those are like pretty much done, but I just want to change it up a little bit. And then I still have the other pieces to complete. And then I have to jump into grad orders. I still have...
how many do you have?
I have 2 full sets. My daughter's is one and her best friend is the second. Mm-hmm. I already have like the whole scheme in my head is already there. My daughter's is already prepped. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like half the battle.
Which one are you going to finish first? The one that you can just be like, oh yeah, it's my daughter, so I don't have to finish the lining.
No, because that one's all prepped. Okay. I think I'm just going to go ahead and get that done because that one I already have the entire concept in my head. She had her colors and everything picked out since last year. So, and she's still picking. Yeah, it's still there. So that I can just go ahead with. The second set, I have the material and it's really not like I'm loving it. So it's kind of like it's motivating too. So I'm like, okay, I already know what I'm doing.
That really makes a difference, eh? When you like look at something like, oh my God, I'm just dying to do this.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about the second one because there's so many possibilities with it. So I'm like, oh yay, like I can't wait. So, and then I have just a pair of moccasins, which is not that, for me,
you have
it's
2 grad orders and a moccasin order.
Yeah, for June. So yeah, so we are mid-January, so I got to get going on that. Like, it seems like, okay, yeah, I got like 5.5 months, but
it creeps up fast.
Yeah, really fast, especially when I'm still working on past stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Here and there, I'll talk about this and I'll see how you feel on that. But maybe it goes into like the procrastination that we were talking about before. So when I am doing large projects, part of me, yes, knows that they got to get done. They have a deadline. I need to work on it. So every waking minute should be on that. But I cannot for the life of me sit and work on one project forever. I don't know why, but I can't. So I kind of like lose that motivation sometimes because it's just like it becomes daunting no matter how much I love the project, no matter how inspired I was. Like sometimes I really just need that break. So in between, I usually will jump to another project that's like that I really have no business doing, but I have to. Sometimes I just need that extra creative outlet just to get off of the daunting one that I'm doing. So from now till June, I will probably have a few other things done that have nothing to do with my orders, just because something's going to inspire me, or I'll just need that break from the big orders, So what are your thoughts on that? And how do you do that? And why do you do that?
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I also had an order so I had a big order, a huge order that was, I think 2019, I think 2019, I had an order. And I can talk about it because it's now over and done with, and they've posted the pictures, and so I might post them too a little bit more. But I had a wedding order. So I had to do accessories for the bride and for the groom. And thankfully, the bride knew how to do moccasins and whatnot, and just wanted the vamps. So I did that. So that was pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had to do a breechcloth for the man, and also cuffs. And then for the bride, I also had to do a yoke and a pair of cuffs. So it wasn't a lot of, it was a lot of pieces, but it wasn't a lot of the same pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, things happened in their lives, and with COVID and different things like that, the wedding was not scheduled, did not happen on the day that they had scheduled. It was very unfortunate why those things didn't happen how they did. However, for me, it was also unfortunate in the fact that I was like kind of set on that timeline. And as soon, like you had talked about, as soon as I knew the gates were open, I had no business to do anything I did between when I gave it to them and when the floodgates were. I had no business doing anything in between. I really didn't. I did tons and tons of stuff in between. But I really fall in that same category that you do, where if I have an open-ended timeline, it just gives me carte blanche to kind of do whatever it is that I need to do to keep myself sane. And I'm not to say that these projects are like holding me down or anything like that. It's just that I think for me, what happens is that I have in my body, how I feel when how this happens is I'll have a custom order. I'm all jazzed about it. They tell me what the things they want. I'm all gung ho. I got the design done, everything. Then you have to execute, picking the colors and different things like that. And that's a process in itself. It could take months. It could take one day, or it could take an hour. But you have to do that. And then you're like deciding like how it is your colors are going to match and all that kind of stuff and all that. And then you're going. And then I reach a peak where I'm like, I'm over this.
Yeah.
I'm like over it. Like I'm already on to and that kind of goes back to why I said like when I'm done an order, I have to like give it to the person right away, because I'm already like months ahead on something else. So I had this order and it took place this past summer, and it ended up getting done. Mind you, I think it was, I don't know, I want to say I don't want to say a month before the wedding. I had to, in the end, make myself a timeline, like a deadline, because it was just too much for me. But I loved how it looked. Like it was like excellent, and it was really good. And I was glad that I got it done. When I do side projects, it's like a big deal. And I'm very guilty of like saying, oh yeah, like, I don't mind, like, I'll take that order. I'll do that. I don't, and a lot of times I think it's when I'm in the midst of a big project, I don't take orders. I just start making things for people. Like they know it's coming, but I just start like being inspired to make things for free, which really doesn't help if you're like not a struggling artist, if you're trying to be a successful artist. But yeah, I really fall into that trap of like, as soon as the window's open, I can be like, oh yeah, I'll do whatever I want. And I suffer from procrastination. I like to be triggered into feeling the stress of a thing and want to get out of it by doing something else. And sometimes it's doing puzzles. If I have a project and then I'll start a 1,000-piece puzzle. I have no business doing a puzzle, but I'll start it. Or I'm like, oh yeah, like today I got to clean under the basement, like clean under the stairs, or let me like make tamales. Like it takes all day. Like I should be beading. So those are the things that happen to me. But I think in the end it works. Unfortunately, I really don't like that kind of stress, but that's how I function kind of. And with now 2022, I have, like I said, those 2 orders. That's it. Like I'm not taking any orders. That's what I say now. And my intention is not to. but I don't plan on taking any more orders because we had talked about on the last podcast with Abby that it really just like stops you from able to being creative, like doing the things that you kind of want to do, which is good because, I mean, it's good that if you're stopping to take orders, then you can do what it is you want. But for me, when you take orders, you know, it's like the money's there. It's so ridiculous. It's so hard. I mean, that's what it is being an artist. Like if it's your job, you want to make money, you know, that's what you're a good way to make a good chunk of money. And I'm not going to lie, like it's good. Yeah. It's a good money, but you're tied into that one project. Like we had talked about yesterday, you're tied into that one project and you can't do anything else. And then you have this like thing, like, I don't want to say that beadwork and the projects are black clouds over you, but that it has a little bit weight on you. Yeah,
it's the obligation or the responsibility of having to get it done all the time. And sometimes you're just not there, but you know it has to be done, you know, so. Yeah. But it's interesting that you're saying that because so sometimes I get a vibe, like, you know, on Facebook or on social media, things like that, how sometimes it seems like people get frustrated that people don't take orders anymore. Because it seems like if you really look, like if you check out like a lot of people's like like their social medias and a lot of the bead workers, it's just like taking orders. Yeah, disclaimers all over the place, like not taking orders. So I found that interesting, like, and something maybe I can pose, you know, like that's a question that we can ask, like, how do people feel like that? Like if you are searching and you need something done, how does it feel like, you know, to keep seeing those kind of things? And then even discussing it from the beader's point of view and how it is, because I had this discussion with other people too before on how it does feel taking orders, you know, like the pressure of it, the responsibility of it, you know, things like that. So orders are not for everybody, you know. Yeah. Like I've been doing it for a long time now, like very long, like I had mentioned this last time. It's not anything to do, like you said, it's not about the order itself. It's the feeling of like, I have to do it. Like, and some days I don't want to do it, you know, but it has to get done. So it's the stress of it all. So like, even for me right now, I've been saying it, like, I'm not taking orders. I'm not, and I'm really not taking any more orders. Like I'm kind of retiring myself from it all. But that's not to say that I'm not going to be beading. Like I'm, you know, I will be. They're just not going to be specific to what people are looking for or what they want or need, you know, at the time. So yeah, it's just interesting to hear different.
How do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel about that? Like saying that out loud, like, how does it make you feel?
I'm like, yay! Like,
me, totally. It feels like a pit in my stomach.
Really? Like,
yeah, like, oh my God, because that's how I live. I mean, not live like in terms of like make money, but that's how I live. Like, that's how I've functioned as a beader.
Yeah, for so long.
That makes you feel like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do it?
Yeah, no, for me, it's kind of like I am excited to be able to have the freedom to do as I please a little bit. And if I feel like taking an order, then, you know, then I will. Like, I don't think I want to tie myself down to huge orders. Like, hey, if you hit me up and you need a medallion or you need moccasins, like those are something I enjoy doing, and they're a little quicker, you know. But I'm like the grad order stuff, I can't. It kind of started creating almost like, and not towards any of the people or anything, but it creates almost like a resentment after a while because I don't want to do it. You know, that's kind of like how I started feeling. Like last year, I didn't kind of respect my own boundaries in a sense last year. And I think I took on too much and I felt it. Last year, I was just like, I felt really overwhelmed with all of it, which was a learning lesson for me. Like learning to say no or what you can really take on, and also maybe documenting and remembering what I'm saying yes and no to, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you forget. Sometimes people hit you up like 2 years in advance and they're like, hey, you know, and you're like, oh my God, you know, like, so stuff like that, like, and it does happen. For me, I'm kind of like really just looking forward to the freedom of doing what I want when I want kind of thing. So, yeah. And what about you?
So it's really interesting that you said about like not keeping track, because I do keep track, but not this one time. So what happened with this current order, and I'm going to talk about it because I talked to the person about, I shared what I was feeling and different things with the person who made the order, and we kind of laughed about it. And it's funny, and I'm not going to name names and all that kind of stuff. But so what was hilarious and was that someone had made an order that I completely forgot about. I didn't write it down because I don't normally write it down, but then I have it sometimes in my phone or whatever. Anyway, so somebody approached me and wanted me to do this order, and she approached me 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And like, you know, because the child was only going to be graduating this year. So 2 years ago, because at the time I was like 2 years out. Like, so if you wanted something for 2022, you had to order at least 2020. Like that's how far in advance I was taking orders because I was really busy. So this person said, yeah, you know, I'm interested. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Whatever. We'll get back in touch with you like in a year or like when she's graduating, the beginning of the graduating year, which would be September. Whatever, everything happened, blah, blah, blah. October comes, maybe the end of September. I get an inbox like, hey, so I'm just wondering about like the order, like what should we be doing and different things like that. And I, no lie, all I wrote was, I think you have the wrong beadwork artist.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is this? No, I don't think so, was the reply. I'm like, yeah, I'm not taking orders. But like, you know, I had already said I wasn't taking orders aside from this other thing. She's like, no, I didn't make any other plans. And yeah, you said you would. Not like in a malicious way. It was just like, you know, like, yeah, you know, you said you would and whatever. And I was just like, well, I can't do it. Because at the time I said I can't do it. I had already said no to already orders for that year too. And so I was just like, nope, can't do it. And I talked to my husband like, oh my God, like this person thinks I'm supposed to do their order. Lo and behold, it was me that was wrong. The person was right. I did say I would. And the funny thing is that like, you know, okay, I'm going to be saying this and I'm on the record. I'm a guilty watcher of reality television, the Real Housewives of like everywhere. And they always say, you got your receipts?
Yeah.
This lady, thank goodness she had her receipts. When she wrote me in a social media platform that we didn't discuss the order. We had discussed it in a different social media platform. So when I was scrolling back to our conversation through that media, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So I was just like, yeah, right. No, she posted the picture of the screenshot of what I had said. Right then and there, I said, yeah, okay. Like, there's no way I wouldn't say yeah. I mean, I like to be truthful to my word. Like when I say I'm going to take your order or yeah, I'll make you a pair of moccasins. Yeah, I will. I don't know when I'm going to make your moccasins. But if I say I'm going to take your order for a certain time, I'm going to be like, stand up and do that. So I did it and we had a good laugh about it. And she was just like, oh my God, you're not taking my order. Whatever. So when we got together, we actually met face to face and she was like, like we just laughed and different things. And I told her it was funny and like, and it's good. Like, you know, like I like this order. It's not like, you know, and it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm not going to take your order because whatever. Like, you know, it was just like, I wasn't taking orders, period. But then in the end, I ended up taking it because like I was just honoring my commitment. So that's the order I have. So when you say like, you should write them down, people, this is a big tip. If you are artists taking orders, write them down. Now,
put it on a list, put it somewhere where you see it, put it on a board, put it on your wall.
Yeah. If you're taking orders, like, you know, like whatever. Now, I will say, and I'm going to admit it to all those who are listening, who I've ever said, I'll put your name on the list. I don't have a list. I do have a list. Or actually, I should say, for those who I'm really serious about and whatnot, I have their actual footprint. So I have people's footprints who like, you know, said like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, like, can you make me pair of moccasins? Give me your footprint. I'll make one. Eventually, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to make it even this, I don't want to say this decade, but, you know, but like I will make one. So, but yeah, like a tip. Okay. So here's like, no jokes aside, and maybe this is some like good content for those who are like inspiring. I want to give 2 tips that I think relate to what we're just talking about now, taking orders. 1, write down everything, details, colors, dates, when the person wants it, all that kind of stuff. And I think too, if you're taking a custom order, like get some little details about them. Like, you know, maybe if they want to say what their clan is, things they're inspired by, different things like that, whatever. Second thing, and it doesn't matter if you are a newbie, it doesn't matter if you're seasoned, always take a deposit. Because what I found, and it didn't really bother me because my husband like works, so we have a steady income in terms of that. But if you're planning on making a steady income off of this, you should be getting paid. You should have money that ties you over until the end, till at least halfway point of that moccasin order or that beadwork order or whatnot. You shouldn't be just doing things for free and waiting for the payout to come at the end. Me? Yeah, like me too. Like, you know, like I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, but the last 2 orders that I did take deposits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that everyone should feel confident. I mean, it's kind of hard. Like, no one really knows kind of how much it will cost. And sometimes, like for me, like I don't really necessarily know how much a project will cost in the end. But take a deposit in like, not necessarily like say half the amount, but whatever you think is able or whatever the person's able to give, even if it's like $100, like at least you know that they're committed and you're committed because there's been like that transaction. So I think those are 2 big tips. I think just for like right now, people should realize it doesn't matter what your level of beadwork is that if you're taking an order, write all the information down, make sure you have a good copy of that. And 2, always take a deposit. Because you got to buy beads. Like, what if you don't have the beads? You got to buy them, and then it's out of pocket.
And see, for me, I guess for the whole deposit thing on my end, I guess a little bit, I guess because like financially, yes, I'm not completely in dire straits sometimes, so I'm kind of like, I don't need to. Sometimes, yes, I am. Like, sometimes I'm like, oh man, like my rent's due. So I'm like, yeah, I need to get that, Yeah. For me, I find that the payout is the motivation sometimes.
Okay.
So, and I need that motivation sometimes, like, because then I feel like I'm working for free if it's already all paid off because that money's gone. It's already on bills. It's already on, it's somewhere already. So for me, I'm like, okay. And I work on lump sums. That's, I find like, it sounds ridiculous. I don't know.
You work on lump sums.
So when I finish a project, I want the full
business plan.
Yeah.
Works on lump sums.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a good one or not, so maybe don't take my advice. But in my mind, if you're paying me like quarterly, or if you're paying me like $100 a year, $100, it feels like a drop in the bucket.
Okay.
So because unfortunately, the time we live in, like $100 doesn't go that far anymore. Things like that. So
it's like in the pocket, out of the pocket, like
exactly.
Quick.
I could gas up my car and it's gone. So for me, it's kind of like the motivation is to get, if I'm making moccasins that are a couple of $100, that's a motivation for me because, okay, I can spread that out across a whole bunch of bills or a whole bunch of groceries or, things like that. So for me, it's different in that sense where I'm like, I want a big payout. I want a big lump sum like to use, so I can't take and I kind of feel like, it's like.
You kind of feel like what? Because there's something in there you want to say.
I lose the motivation almost. Like I enjoy beading, not for the money, but the money is the payout in the end for me because it is it's part of my income. It's part of it's my job, it's half of my job. Like I own my shop and all of that. That also makes, that's my part of my income, but the beadwork is the chunk of my livelihood. Yeah. So, for me, it works better in that sense, it's like, okay, well, I got a big lump sum. I can pay part of my visa or I can do that, that for me, that's how it works. So it's different, I guess, for everybody though, because some people need that security too, in a sense, like, especially in like when you're doing something custom, when you're doing something that pertains to that person, of course, a lot of people will love it or they'll think it's beautiful, but it may not be for them, in that sense, or it was based off of whatever, so sometimes, with the personal things, it is sometimes a lot better to have that security that, okay, well, this person's, like serious about this order or whatever.
Have you ever had a fallout?
I was just going to ask you that. So yeah, actually.
You did?
Yeah, but not with beading because this kind of goes into my artistic part too, because I am, like I said, I am also an artist in a sense, so I do paint, I do drawings, I do things like that. My whole artist career, I guess, started more in paintings. And then it kind of merged in with the beadwork. And then I just jumped right into beadwork and kind of left the painting behind. But when I was when I was painting more, I guess, professionally, I was taking orders and there was a really specific order and it was a really large painting that somebody had wanted. And she set a price. She set all this. And I was very new at the time. Like I didn't take any whatever. I didn't even really know the whole system on how I should price or whatever. So yeah, it was very personal. Very personal. Some of the things that she wanted in there and requested. And then she did want beadwork incorporated.
She did or she didn't?
She did.
Oh, okay.
So that was going to be added as well. And for whatever reason, you know, I understand that life changes for people, like, and they can't always commit sometimes, which is hard on the artist too, but sometimes you have to be understanding. So that's kind of what happened. She couldn't commit anymore to the full price of what we had discussed. So we minimized it, but then I had to adjust what was in the painting and how much detailing. And then I was like, well, maybe we can't do the beadwork and things like that. In the end, the whole thing fell through. She couldn't even take it at all at any price. And she kind of let me know before the painting was even completed.
Okay.
In that case, now I was, you know, sitting on a really big painting, like a huge painting, with very specific detailing, very, you know, and thankfully it was more of a general thing though, a little bit, like it was more of an outdoor garden scene type of thing. So so I had a showing and I put it up for sale there and it sold, thankfully. But yeah, that for me, that was like the first time I had like more of a falling out in those kind of things. And, you know, and it happens. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes people can't commit, like things do change. And I can't say that it doesn't suck. Sometimes it really sucks when you're waiting and you're like, okay, I got that money coming in, you know, and it doesn't, you know, so, but you sometimes you got to be understanding and you got to kind of let things go.
If the person fell on hard times, you can't be like, well, give me my money for the painting. Like that's the last thing the person needs is a painting hanging, you know?
Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of the way I looked at it and all that. And, you know, so that was it. And what about you?
Never.
Never? Oh, well, that's good.
Never. Never have I ever. No. I've never had an incident like that where I've created something and the person didn't want it. But I sell at shows sometimes, like art shows. And sometimes people come in, they're like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. I want it, blah, blah, blah. And they sell, at the show, you're selling yourself. You're selling your art. So you're investing time in talking to people and giving them tidbits of your story and different things like that. And when they tell you sometimes that they're really interested, you believe them.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to make a sale. It's going to be so great.
And you're like, goodbye.
But yeah, because they seem like they're really interested and maybe they are, but then maybe like, it's like the flight of the wind. Like, you know, it's just like,
it's pretty. It's something they like, but.
Yeah. And then they say, yeah, I'm going to go and whatever. And they come back and then they're there back and forth. Because that's what it is. Like if somebody really likes a piece and they're at this, like, say, art show, let's say Santa Fe or the Herd or wherever, and they're looking for things to buy, and they're going, like most people, I don't want to say most people are going there just to look, but some people with lots of money go and they buy things like at these shows and whatnot. They'll come and you'll invest your time, they invest their time in you, blah, blah, blah. They go off and then they come back and they go, because it's like sometimes it's a big purchase, sometimes it's not a big purchase, but they come back and they go back and you're like, oh my God, this person. Then I was telling my husband, he was there like, this person's going to buy it. I can't wait. It's going to be like on a sale. It's going to be excellent. Then nothing.
Yeah.
And they're like, and I really, for the first time, and I'm not trying to sound anyway, but I'll admit that the last show I went to was the Herd Museum 2020, and I didn't sell a thing. I did not sell one thing at that show. Now, I was gutted, I'll admit, because you spend not even the time for the beadwork, like that's okay. But you spend the money to go, and the Herd is in Phoenix, Arizona. So you're buying your ticket, you're playing like a place to stay, all of the stuff that you need to when you're there, all that stuff, and you don't sell anything. I was gutted. I was gutted. Now, thankfully, a lot of things were online. Like in terms of like the Santa Fe India Market 2020 was online. I posted those same items and everything except for one thing didn't sell. One thing didn't sell, everything else sold. So that was okay. But in the moment when you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a good payout. Like I put all this effort into coming here. And then in the end, it was like, yeah, I put all this effort into the beadwork, but it was actually going there because I probably could have just sold anywhere if I put it on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. So that's the only time I've actually had a situation like that. But I had already invested like mega bucks.
Yeah, to the whole trip.
But in the end, like I went to see my family is from out there. And so I got to see them. And then I also like when I had a vacation with my husband before we were on our way and like people were saying, stay home, you know, like that kind of thing. So So that's the only time I've ever experienced it. But it's a gutting thing. Like it really it was a huge ego blow. I mean, okay, so
it is, yeah.
Before we were talking about ego, but like when you go and you've won, and I won when I was there, but when you go and you win and you don't sell anything, it's like,
you're like, what's going on here?
Here? So, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of goes into this, the question that we have on, we have a nice little list of things to kind of go over, but your successes and failures. And I think that's important to bring up too, especially for new beaters, even older beaters sometimes, because it's new avenues. Like I'm an older beater, but I haven't really gone to shows. I haven't done those kind of things. I've wanted to, but I just don't get there. And part of it is because I'm always like locked into orders that I don't have anything ready for shows, like we had mentioned our last podcast. But yeah, so it's kind of like looking at that, like the successes and the failures of beadwork too, and knowing that, you know what, it's not be all end all type of thing too.
Yeah.
Like when you're going through it, it's kind of like you kind of see where you need to improve or where things need to change or where it's just the way it is sometimes, you know, like seasoned beaters, like new beaters, everybody kind of goes through those, you know, ups and downs, roughs, patches. And it's funny too. It's kind of like, I was looking at how like selling times, how sometimes you see things being sold on Facebook or whatever. And sometimes things go right away.
Oh, okay.
And then sometimes you see people reposting. So it's funny how sometimes there's a market like time for when people are like, okay, I want to get beadwork, I want to buy it. And then sometimes it doesn't happen. Like, and even that too, it's trying to take it not personally, not that it's like, oh, my stuff's no good or, you know, like that kind of thing. Cause I think a lot of people kind of feel that sometimes, like where if I put my beadwork on Facebook or wherever and it doesn't sell right away, then it sometimes it is an ego blow. Like, oh my God, nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. Like there's an insecurity sometimes how you perceive your work or, you know, like
or how you think people perceive you as a beadworker.
Yeah. So those are interesting things too, you know, how people feel about just selling their stuff or promoting their stuff or showing their things and how sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't for everybody, you know, across the board. So that's pretty interesting to kind of look at too, you know. So
what do you think is your biggest success if we were talking about that?
My biggest success, so one of my most favorite pieces that I had that kind of got a lot of, I guess, promotion or whatever was a bear painting that I did years ago now, like a long time ago. That painting was a bear. It was just a small little painting. It wasn't even that big. So I painted it all, but the bear itself had, it was all beaded. So all the pieces inside were beaded. And I did different little things like culturally, I wanted to have it more representations of our culture. So there was all our clans, like our... What
clan are you?
I'm bear.
Okay.
So of course that was the first and foremost, you know, so that was the outline. But I had snipe, turtle, wolf, they were all in there. That's, you know, 2 Kahnawake. So those were in there. I had tobacco. I had our hummingbirds, you know, like everyone in town, like loves those, you know, it's something natural that we always see. There were strawberries, there was different medicines. So there was a lot of different things. I guess it's just my art form. I like things being like on the borderline of being busy, like overly busy. Like there's like, when you cross that threshold and you're like, okay, this is like way too much, like it's a hot mess, or like just before that, that's kind of like where I like to kind of, you know, live. Yeah. So I like things to be full. I like a lot of stuff in my, my art, my beading and whatnot. So that was the idea of, I wanted the bear kind of almost full in there. So when I did that piece, I loved it. You know, I had it hanging around and I wanted to submit it into different shows. So I had put it into the...
That's actually this place you put it in?
Yes.
Is the first place I think we actually met, maybe.
Yeah, because you...
And it was kind of awkward, though, because we were both from Kahnawake and we both had this showing at the Iroquois Museum in Brantford, in Six Nations in Brantford at the Woodland Cultural Center. And you were there that night, and I was there with my daughter. And we were just like, hi.
Like, hello.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't even talk. We didn't know each other really, right?
Yeah, not at all. So that was my first showing for that. Or actually, no, I shouldn't say that because I've had shows here in town. I had maybe 2 or 3 with artwork at the cultural center. But I wanted to do something outside of the community to see, you know. So I had submitted my piece there and then it was accepted. So I had a few pieces actually in there. But that one got the most buzz, that piece itself. Like they even use it as their flyer. They use it as their
So
promotion, on their all of their stuff. So yeah, so it was pretty exciting, like to have such a good, feedback on it. That bear was also used in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, I was inboxed years ago from a healing center in Toronto that they used it for their promotion piece, and they had posters made of it and they put it all over the place. And so it was all over Toronto too. So yeah, so that was probably one of my most successful pieces. I eventually sold it because for me, my mother always jokes and says I'm heartless, but I don't have sentimental value to things. I don't.
You don't acquire knickknacks?
No.
Oh my God, that's my life. But
no, not at all. Like I did change a little bit, and I'll go into that in a bit, but for the most part, I love it. I love it, but I don't know. It's just another piece. It's kind of like taking up space. Like that's how I view it. I actually really enjoy when somebody buys it, or obviously, yes, when it's nice to sell it, but when I know that they love the piece, that it has some kind of a meaning to them, that it becomes a display or really, they love it. So to me, that's where I get my joy out of it, So that piece was purchased in Kahnawake, so it's locally owned. So it's nice. It's nice to know that somebody has it and it means something to them, and I know what it looks like. I made it. So it's kind of like the sentiment to me is in the memory of it. It's not in the actual piece. Like I know what it is, But yeah, that's kind of how I kind of work with some of those things too, like, yeah. So that's kind of one of my big successes, I guess. Yeah.
My success what I think of as success, it has nothing to do with the selling or anything about that. I think I have two big successes. The first one is that when I see people wearing things that I make.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I always talk about like how utilitarian the pieces are, like it's functional art.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wearable art, really. People should be wearing things, People, I mean, it's an investment. Like sometimes it could be hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars. Some of the things, and some things are just things like yuntukatota, like just to look at.
Yeah.
Like, and that's Mohawk for like just things like museum, like to look
pieces,
at.
Yeah.
And some things, a lot of things I make are like wearable pieces. And so I love it to see people wearing them. And when I tell people, I like, wear it in your house. Like if you're like, this is something that maybe you might know of too, but a lot of times people buy these things for when they die.
Yeah.
And they just have them, or they have them sitting somewhere or whatever. I mean, and it's one thing to be like buying something for yourself. And there's one thing to buy things that are just beautiful things and you want to keep them in a cabinet. That's cool. Like,
Mm-hmm.
But I think to honor yourself would be to wear them.
Yeah.
And I have experience with this when I've made different pieces for people who have passed away, and there's no marking on the sole. It's like yes, it's made with the intention to make sure that these people have nice things, but it's sad to see that those people have not lived and walked in this, like,
yeah.
And they have other things they've lived and walked in, and that's how it is. But I tell people, like, if you buy something, just even wear it around your house. Like, yes,
give it life.
Give it life. Like, enjoy it. Like if you're spending the time, or if somebody took the time to make this for you, then enjoy what it is they made for you. If you wanted and commissioned a piece, enjoy it. Like that's a thing. Like people wear $1,000 shoes that are made in like China or different things, and that's okay. But this is something somebody handmade for you. So, like, for me, that's what it is. I mean, that's my personal take on it. I think people should be wearing it as much as they can, if it drives them. But like, at least wear your moccasins, please, please, please wear your moccasins.
No,
like, even in the house, like just
whatever. I totally agree, because I'm more of a functional artist myself. Yeah. I like to make whimsies and those kind of things, just because for me those are like quick, nice, creative outlets that end up just getting hung up though. And they're viewing and all that. I like the whole moccasins. I like the clothing. I like doing things like that. Even that I've done a vase in the past, and some people were kind of like, well, it's a beautiful showpiece. Like you just put, I'm like, I would put my pens in it. Like, like I want it to be used, and to each their own. Though it's not everybody is, going to use it in the way that I've intended, and that's totally fine too. But I'm the same. Like if I'm going to make something, it's kind of like, I want it to have a life, because I also feel sometimes that it's sad to have things that are just tucked away sometimes, I guess, or they're not
like waiting.
Yeah,
for that time.
like there's no life.
Yeah.
The life isn't there with them. So it's funny. I don't know. It's I understand your perspective on it and all that, because sometimes I feel the same on it. But to each their own, because like I just bought a hutch,
Oh yeah, for your stuff.
for viewing purposes too, because this was the backstory on it, like how my mother says I'm heartless sometimes with not keeping things or having a sentiment. But somebody had made a comment to me before, and it kind of it stuck with me a little bit, because I don't, for the most part, I don't really keep things, even beaded things, like, and it's kind of that whole thing about how what is the saying, like a carpenter,
the cobbler has no shoes.
Exactly. So it's the same with beaders, or for me anyways, like I don't have a pair of my own moccasins that I've made for myself. My daughter doesn't, like my son does, but that's because he graduated, so it was for something specific. I have those kind of things sitting in my hutch and all of that, but the idea was I give everything away most of the time, or I sell everything that I've done. So somebody had said, like, well, what about one day when you're gone? What are your children going to have from you? And I was like, oh, yeah, like maybe
memories.
Yeah, like in a sense, though, like, because for me, it's not anything about the item itself. It's my memories. But hey, I'm taking those when I leave. So, I was kind of like, I don't know how they would feel one day. Like, yeah, my mother was a bead worker and I got nothing, So there are a few pieces that I've made that I've kept. And one day, if when I bow out, then, they're welcome to it. So at least they'll have something. And, instead of like the whole Confederacy or the whole community having something, and my own kids don't. So for me, I started kind of taking little things and keeping them and, stuff like that. But my hutch only holds so much, and I'm pretty much going to stop once it gets full. So that's about it for me,
It's interesting you say that about your vase, and I know we're coming up to time, but I have a vase too. And I'm just like, God, when is this going to sell? Like one, like when is it going to sell? But two, it's like, I don't want that in my house. Like, I am not a woman who has beautiful things sitting out, like fine works of art or different things like that. Like I don't have that kind of stuff, and I don't have like a place to showcase it. And it doesn't really jive with my aesthetic. It's nice. The piece is nice, but it's not like...
It's not for you.
It wasn't intended.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And I think that's one of the things maybe we could talk about later on at another podcast, is just like when you're working on projects that are meant to sell to anyone, like general, and then custom order. Maybe it's something we could talk about, maybe pose that question too, like the feelings behind it. Because I have some different feelings about things that I make custom and things that I'm just like trying to make money off. And, like,
I think we're like opposite general. Kind of how we view it. Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know that if you're looking for maybe inspiration from either Tekaronhiahkhwa or I, you can check out my Instagram, which is Leith Mahkewa. That's where you can reach me.
On Instagram.
And
mine is TS Beading, also on Instagram. Most of my content is in that page, so you can find everything there. For all your questions or anything else, we do have a page for the Beading Table. So it's
all one word, Instagram.
So anything with the podcast or the show, it's better to kind of, I guess, jump to that page.
Yeah, the Beading Table. So that way we both can see it.
Yeah. I hope everybody else enjoys the time that we're, that we're out here. And we kind of want to include others in a lot of what we're doing too. So, if you're out there, if you're listening, feel free to stop in at our, Instagram and give us some questions. Or if there's anything that you've heard that we were talking about that you agree with, don't disagree with, or you have your own views on it, like for sure, like hit us up, like share on the thing, because it's always nice to hear the dialogue, like hear what other people have to say. And that's kind of my parting words for today's topic. I know we didn't get to all of the juicy, but
yeah, there's gonna be a lot of juicy topics coming up.
And it's kind of like, this is our first official with just me and Leith in the studio. We're just kind of like, feeling our way through all of this and trying to keep dialogue too, because it's not always easy. So I think what to expect in some of the next shows is we'd like to hit into some of those real juicy topics, but maybe not right off the bat, and trying to kind of like keep some tricks up our sleeve for some of the podcasts to come. So, but
I think like in terms of the format, like you'll notice, the listeners will notice that we kind of start on a topic and we go somewhere else, and then we come back and different things like that. I think that's just how we like interact.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun. I hope.
Yeah,
I hope it's gonna be fun. And I think I'll maybe like just agree with the sentiment in terms of like people can go to the Instagram, the Beading Table, and help us add some content by like posing questions, different things, thoughts about maybe what you've heard today on this podcast. Or I think maybe a good idea would be like, maybe if we have a future topic, maybe we'll post a question about that specific topic, or people like have different things they want to say about it, or suggestions or different things. And then we can like, maybe refer to it in our podcast or something like that.
Even that, like I was thinking, because like you said, we did touch on pricing or tips and things like that. We didn't go really into depth on some of them. And there were a lot of really good questions that we had seen on the Instagram, like, for example, like that, the pricing. How do you, more in depth, like how do you break it down? What are,
do you charge by the hour?
Yeah, those kind of things. So those are other questions.
Somebody even said, does it change depending on who's ordering? That is something different too. But that's for another topic. But that's exactly. Like hot and juicy.
But yeah, I think we will wrap it up for today, and go.
Everybody, and what's said at the bead table stays at the bead table.
The views and opinions of the guests expressed in this podcast do not reflect those of Redeewase and its employees.